fantastic line. Tonight we have a fantastic lineup for you. We have Jenny and Claire from the Yorkshire Rewilding Network's Red Kite Rewilding Project team, and Jen from the National Education Nature Park. The team's going to be talking about how the Red Kite Learning Trust schools in the Harrogate and Leeds area are rewilding their school grounds. But before I hand over to them, just a few bits of standard Yorkshire Rewilding Network information. So this is the last webinar of our autumn-winter season. By my reckoning, this is our 30th webinar, and we've been running these for 6 seasons across 7 calendar years since 2020. You can find all of the previous ones, or at least I think all of the previous ones, through the website under the resources menu, and then follow YRN webinars. Alternatively, we also have them all on our YouTube channel as well. So though it's the last webinar of the season, do keep an eye out for our summer site visit program, as well as any other events that'll pop up during the year. So you need to keep checking back on our events page on the website for that. And in order to keep yourselves up to date and get involved, there's a number of different options. If you go to the Join Us section, sign up for our newsletter. You can also join the Yorkshire Rewilding Forum. And the button for that is down there on this particular Join Us page. And there's also another button there to link to our newsletter. We have a number of other resources on the website. As an example, under the resources pull down, we've got a number of book reviews. It's definitely 42, it might be more now. We've also got a section specifically for rewilding related books for children. And certainly at least 10 of those on there at the minute. A very comprehensive set of reviews. And just a reminder, we are a charity. We're run entirely by volunteers, and we do have some reasonably significant running costs. So if you are able to help us financially in any way, under the Support Us pull down on our menu, website, we have a donate button. And for those in a position to help us a little bit more, we also have our Wild 100 Club. And we really do appreciate any help you can give us. This is the last you'll see of me tonight. We tend to do a double act. My colleague Jeff will handle the Q&A at the end. And for that, we're actually going to use the Q&A button on Zoom, but also feel free to use the chat just to chat amongst yourselves, comments, that sort of thing. But questions specifically under the Q&A button. Okay, over to the main event. So I think I'm handing over to you initially, Jenny. So if you're ready, off you go.
Hi, can you see me okay? Hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. All right. Well, it's really lovely to be here tonight, and thanks everyone for joining us. We're really welcoming the chance to chat about the project with everyone. You're going to hear from all 3 of us today. So me and Claire and Jen Horseman. We all have quite different backgrounds. We're going to present to you for 45 minutes, and there'll be about 15 minutes for questions at the end. So first of all, we'll just tell you a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Jenny Marks. I'm leading the Red Kite Rewilding Initiative. My background is actually in plant science. I've done quite a lot of teaching over the years in different contexts, but my main career has all been around nature conservation. So I worked as a biodiversity partnership coordinator with a big partnership of organisations. I've been an ecological consultant, mainly doing great crested newt and dormouse work with a big landscape scale project actually for dormice in the southwest. And then 10 years at the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, managing nature reserves and running some off-site projects as well. I left there after I had my second child. So I have 2 children, and of course they're a massive influence in my life. I'm on the committee of the Yorkshire Rewilding Network, and really all my career I've really wanted to make change on the ground, so see something concrete changing, or not concrete actually, improvements for biodiversity, and now involving children as well. It's like this project is bringing both of those interests together. So here's Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Blindell. I'm actually a communications professional. I'm an ex-BBC journalist, and I was a researcher with Countryfile. For the past sort of 6 or so years, I've been helping to set up a local environmental charity called Otley 2030 near Leeds. Here I'm the nature lead, and I was part of the team creating one of our country's first local nature recovery plans. I've also worked with the Yorkshire Wildlife Network too as their community engagement officer. And my passion really lies in achieving a more equitable access to nature, and the positive effects that nature connection can bring to all communities. I've worked for years in schools, and I really enjoy seeing the immediate benefits of outdoor learning for both pupils and for staff. And my own children, whose love of nature is also a big inspiration for me. I'm going to pass on to Jen.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Horseman. I'm the Senior Programme Officer for the National Education Nature Park as one of the regional teams for Yorkshire and the Humber. And I work for the Royal Horticultural Society. Though I'm not from an ecology background or a horticultural one, I actually studied paleoanthropology, which is human evolution, to master's level. And that took me into a career in museum and heritage learning and engagement. So I've worked in my career on developing, engaging, activities, delivering them, resources as well, workshops for learners of varying different ages, but particularly with children and young people and schools, and providing school trips. For some part of this, I worked quite a lot with outdoor learning, and often this was learners who didn't have that many opportunities to access nature at home. So this is one of the key motivators really for why I'm working now on the Nature Park programme, where we aim to provide some nature access for children at their places of education. I'm also a very keen plants person. Anyone that knows me knows I love cacti and succulents. With a different hat, I'm the vice chair of the Sheffield branch of the British Cactus and Succulent Society. And before my role for the Royal Horticultural Society, I worked for the plant conservation charity Plant Heritage. So it's combining a lot of my experience and my passions. And with yet another hat on, I'm the co-chair of the RHS Neurodivergence Network, Kaleidoscope Thoughts. So I know really from lived experience that accessing nature can be particularly valuable for learners that struggle inside the traditional classroom context for either social or sensory reasons. So I think it's just really valuable that people have access to that wherever they go to school.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much, Jen and Claire. So I'm now going to get stuck in with our presentation. So hopefully everyone can now see our slides. So the first thing I wanted to do was just explain a little bit about the background for the project and what it is. So the Red Kite Learning Trust is a multi-academy trust made up of 16 schools in Leeds and Harrogate. More than 10,000 children and young people, and they run through from nursery to sixth form. So in July 2023, I went in to speak to Richard Sheriff, who was then the CEO of the trust, and the head of estate about rewilding their school grounds. And we very quickly decided that we didn't want it just to be me giving advice about what they could do. We wanted to make sure we were involving the children in the project, getting them to make decisions, getting them to understand their school grounds. So using that power of schools to change hearts and minds and involve people with nature the whole way through, learn that they can make a difference in their own area locally, and therefore make a difference to big issues like climate and biodiversity. So a great thing about working with a trust is that there are lots of shared things. So a sustainability committee, a youth board, an estates team, pretty much a single contractor who works with most of the schools, although not all of them. So it's efficient and it allows us to be fairly consistent in the way we're working with schools, but allowing lots of flexibility too, which is really important. So we had our two core aims really quickly, which were improve biodiversity, involve children in nature. We decided to go about that initially by working with 3 pilot schools and really making it a big learning thing. So we wanted to make sure that it was going to work for all the schools, that it was going to be flexible, it was simple, so there weren't set outcomes. Actually, there are parallels with rewilding here. So it was all about bringing nature back and making sure people were part of that, particularly the children. That actually went really well, and we then in July 2025 got funding in order to be able to expand out from the 3 pilot schools and offer the project to all of the Red Kite Trust. So it's allowed us to have Claire involved as the project officer. We've also had the chance to work with some really great volunteers, which we're very grateful for. And I want to acknowledge here the funders, who are ENGIE, it's a Leeds-based energy company, and through the Yorkshire Wildlife Network is the way that we ended up getting that funding. So that's been brilliant. So the process that we quickly decided upon also actually was we needed to first of all understand our sites. So this applies to any land management, whether it's a garden, a school, whatever. You have to know what's there. So we wanted to map our existing habitats. We wanted to do that with the children. We wanted to look for rewilding opportunities, understanding the use of the site and where things could change, and then agree an activity plan so that we knew what we wanted to do where, and then get on and make the changes or allow those changes to happen. We wanted to make sure that we were going to involve the children, senior leadership team, site team, and any other stakeholders really at every stage. If you don't do that, it's unlikely that it's going to succeed because people don't really know why they're doing it, or they don't actually agree with what you're trying to do. So that was really important for us. And also communicate, evaluate, and update. So this was all this whole learning approach. So in July 23, as I said, we had this meeting and decided on steps 1 and some of the others. And I confidently said, oh yes, I'll be able to find some mapping methodology to use with children. I then went off and couldn't find any. And I was thinking, oh dear. And then by an amazing coincidence of timing, the nature park launched in October of that year. And actually that has free resources which allows you to map your sites with children, and it's all linked with an online free GIS mapping software. So that was absolutely fantastic for us. And in fact, the resources of the nature park have really become a main delivery mechanism for the whole project. So Jen, of course, is going to be telling us much more about that later on.
Okay, so why do this? Look at all those lovely smiling faces of lots of children all over the Red Kite schools in Leeds and Harrogate, clearly sort of loving, engaging with nature and learning outside. And sadly, as Jen alluded to, it doesn't actually happen that much. A bit of sort of depressing stuff now, but I promise we'll get back onto the inspirational stuff in a minute. The UK, as probably most of you know, is one of the most nature depleted countries. And as a society, we are struggling with a disconnect with nature. I'm going to quote directly from government data here about young people, which says, a significant enduring disconnect exists, particularly among older, lower income and urban youth. Approximately 12% of children rarely or never visit natural environments. A nature connection dip occurs from age 10, with over a quarter, 27% of 12 to 15-year-olds reporting low nature connection. We also know we're facing twin climate and biodiversity crises, and our children and schools are bearing the brunt of this, particularly with extreme heat events in the summer term and flooding in the winter. But we can do something about this, and everything is coming into place to help schools make climate resilience and nature connection part of everyday life. It's now widely accepted that access to nature and quality green space is really important for our health and well-being, and this is especially true for children. But newer studies coming from the UK and Europe are proving that even looking out at green rather than grey can affect and improve children's attainment, not only their well-being, linking to better outcomes for students and for schools. And it works well for all children of all ages and their teachers, as you can see. So I'm just going to read out, if you let me, some quotes from the project so far. So a year 2 pupil, that was the most fun lesson ever. Year 5, oh, we finished, that was too short a time. And moving up into secondary school, for anyone that wasn't year 7 like me, this is an 11, 12-year-old. Are you telling the truth about this information going to real scientists in London? Wow. And that's them learning that all of this information and the mapping and the activities that you do feed in to the work that the National Education Park is doing with the Natural History Museum. And the teachers have loved it too. telling us that the children just love being outside. So this is part of the story why working with the Red Kite Learning Trust schools is an ideal pilot project. This trust has primary and secondary schools in a big range across Leeds and Harrogate, which represent a mix of socio-economic and ethnic backgrounds. Some of the schools have expansive, amazing, diverse grounds and green space, and some have almost none. We're learning that this project works well in all schools, and that's due in part to this fantastic framework of resources that we're accessing from the National Education Nature Park, which seems a really good point to pass on to Jen to tell us more.
Thanks so much, Claire. I'm just going to steal your screen share and replace it with my own. So if everybody could bear with me one moment. And there we have it. There we go. So thank you so much for the great introduction. And I wanted to tell you a little brief intro to the National Education Nature Park and how it works today. As I've mentioned with my little intro at the start, I'm on one of the regional teams for Yorkshire and Humber, but it is a national programme that is going on across the whole of England. So each region has its regional team of 2 people, and I work in Yorkshire with my colleague Jen Davis, and we're often known as Jen Squared because 2 Jens, 1 team. So to introduce what we do, I hope if there's some educators on the call who haven't heard of this before, it just kind of whets your appetite. I can see already from the chat that we've got some familiar faces here as well, so it's really great to see you. I will give you a brief overview of kind of what we do, how it works. And one of the key things I want to really highlight is that we are free. So this is a programme that's fully funded by the Department for Education. There's no cost to settings wanting to take part. And it runs the full spectrum of formal education. So from early years all the way through to post-16 college. I should say as well, although it is England focused and based on the English national curriculum because of the devolved nature of education, the overwhelming majority of resources for this programme are accessible to anyone. So home educators, childminders, people working at heritage sites, or just interested people who want to use it with their own children, please feel free to check out the programme resources, and we'd love to hear from you how they've worked. The key kind of aspect of our ethos is the empowerment of the children and young people, making sure that they feel they can do something for nature. And I just want to reflect back on some of the things that Claire has just shared, about the state of nature, because we know that there's a degree of climate anxiety that particularly children and young people experience. So we want this programme to be a positive counterpoint to that, enabling them to know that the actions they take make a difference, even if it's something on a smaller scale. The National Education Nature Park is this joined up network of all of these different schools, colleges and nurseries taking part. And you can see on the slide these sites that have begun to map their habitats, map their boundaries, and it's a huge amount of space with a huge amount of potential. So together we can do something massive. And part of that is taking part in the scientific research. Wow, is the data really going to scientists in London? Yes, it absolutely is. The contribution of the education estate towards the wider biodiversity of England isn't really a metric that's known as yet. So this is one of the reasons why the mapping has been developed. This is so that the researchers at the Natural History Museum can use the Predicts database to try and reach conclusions about the biodiversity of school grounds across the whole country. So those children are actually being scientists and creating data that hasn't previously existed. We are not alone as well with the Nature Park. We have our sister projects, which sit under the Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy of the DFE, which are Climate Ambassadors, Let's Go Zero, and the Sustainability Support for Education website. All of these sister projects can support places of education with their climate action plan. So if we've got educators in the audience, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them for support if that's what you're looking to do. I'm not going to read off this slide. You can see some of the headline stats for yourself, but I love this animated GIF that shows our progress over time, really, from when we first launched in October 23, increasing amounts, these clusters of schools are signing up, and we've got far more now still. What I'd like to draw your attention to, and I think I can put the link in the chat at the end, is this case study from Herringthorpe Infant School in Rotherham, which has recently been published. And it's a lovely example of a school who've really integrated this. This quote was said directly to me when I was visiting there. People don't always see insects, so they might not want to look after insects. So we are trying to show them insects and make them care, which is such a wise and profound thing for a child in an infant school to say. And yet that they are saying it. You know, people don't care about things they can't see, so you've got to see it. Our wider programme goals, so that empowerment is core to it, but we do it in these sorts of ways, and these are some of the things we're hoping to get out of the programme. One is to integrate learning about nature and climate with curriculum teaching. So getting it right in the heart of education. Many schools take part in things like forest school or gardening clubs or eco clubs, which are all fantastic things, often extracurricular things. So the approach that we take with Nature Park is to try and encourage and support a whole school approach with curriculum linked resources, making sure that people, children and young people in every class, in each different subject, have an opportunity to go outside and learn about climate and nature. And it gives it a bit more robustness against things like staff changes that can happen in settings, and future-proofs it, essentially. We also hope that by going outside more and being more involved in creating the natural spaces on their site, that the children and young people develop more of a connection to nature and see themselves as part of nature. We can often be quite blind to nature and the phenomenon of plant blindness, just not even tuning in the things that are around you, trying to work to combat that phenomenon and feel more in line with nature and part of it, and that it's for you as well. Also, the development of green and digital skills, things that will prepare the children and young people for their future. And the final one, which is what the topic of this webinar is mainly about, the boosting of the biodiversity across the education estate. So how do we do it? Well, Jen and I are your programme officers for Yorkshire, and we're here to support settings with understanding the programme. We can give top tips, we can help with tech support, but the main programme is an online hub. It's the Nature Park website. That is the Nature Park. There's lots and lots of these high quality resources on the site. And as you can see from some of the screenshots I put on, they're all tagged with different subjects and different key stages to make it as easy as possible for a teacher to find something that works for them and their learners. They're all linked with the national curriculum and the early years frameworks, and they've all been rigorously quality assured. So it's all in line with current climate science. And at the bottom, I wanted to highlight, I call this the rainbow donut. That's not officially what we call it. I call it the rainbow donut. This is the Nature Park 5-step process. So that is the process which will take you through a project of biodiversity increase. And it's very much like the process that Jenny was talking about in an earlier slide. This is how it works. So very, very similar. It's creating a baseline of your site, and we call it getting to know your space. And this could be getting some species ID, going out with some field guides, using Seek by iNaturalist, which the children love using. They love finding out the Latin names of things. You know, when I was 7, I wanted to know the name of every dinosaur. I see no reason why people shouldn't want to know the Latin name of every plant that's in their outdoor space, and every beetle and everything. But getting to know your space is also about the learners and how they respond to the space. So we've got sensory activities, texture mapping, sound mapping, which bits of the site make you happy, which bits of the site make you calm. And once you know that, you can start to identify some opportunities for change and improvement. We've got this fab picture of this young chap looking very quizzically up at the trees, trying to decide, is it broadleaf, is it evergreen, mapping it out and trying to decide what type of habitat you've got. And I'll talk a little bit more about the mapping shortly. But with your baseline of information, then you can start to filter it down and decide on what projects are most feasible for your space, most desirable. And this, I mean, who doesn't love sticky dots, right? This is just a simple activity, getting the children to vote on their favourite biodiversity improvement, or from our 3 ways of prioritising opportunities activity. We've also got things developed by the RHS, so you don't need to be a horticulturalist, a gardener to participate in this programme. Get your learners to use the Find That Plant activity, because they can then look up which plants will live on clay. Well, we'll find out, and then you'll start to get some information to feed into your project design. This bit, I think I don't need to cover this in too much detail. This is the best bit. This is getting your fingers in the soil, getting your trees planted, getting your seeds sown, making that change happen. The stuff that people like the Yorkshire Rewilding Network can support with, or local organisations in your area. And if anybody's joined from a bit further afield, just get in touch, because we have networks with quite a lot of orgs who can potentially help you with the practical parts. And finally, recording change. So this is the bit where the children and young people get to see the impact that they've had, and more data is being collected. So the example here is doing pollinator counts, which are a version just derived from the POMS, the standard POMS pollinator counts, to make them a bit more child friendly. And you can see if you do a pollinator count in an area that's been mown to its usual schedule versus an area that they've decided to allow to grow, then hopefully they can start to see some of those impacts in a relatively quick turnaround. We know that biodiversity change doesn't always happen quickly, but some of these tools can hopefully get the learners to see what they've managed to do. So this was about the Nature Park map. I've taken some screenshots here off the live map that's on our website. These are 8 of the schools in the Red Kite Learning Trust who Jenny and Claire have supported, and the fantastic maps that they've produced. I'm going to zoom on into this one up top. Here we go. So you can see the great level of detail there. So essentially the process is take the learners out, use the resources, they'll identify what kind of habitats. You can then use, this is essentially ArcGIS, to plot it on your school for free with your login on Nature Park. Create this map, and then from this map, you can do several different things. You can use it to inform a site management plan, liaise with your site management team. You can use it to show the children and young people what they've achieved. What, you know, remember when we went out with the quadrats? Well, look what we've made together. You could use it to talk to funders, potentially. You could use it to talk to governors or other members of the school community to really give them that example of what you're trying to achieve. And this is just the before state. We've got a mapping change tool, which is essentially a slider. So, for example, if that square of grey, the tarmacked area in the upper left, you decided to dig all of that up and plant a bunch of trees on it, you could add that to the mapping change tool and then show to everyone exactly what you've managed to achieve and the square footage that you've rewilded. Great tool for accountability. My last slide here, so just a few little things from our independent review, suggesting some of the impacts this has on learners. In early years, language development, behavioural regulation. In primary, positive for children that struggle with concentration in the classroom. And in secondary, children taking pride of spaces, so citizenship. And also they are motivated, it cascades for them to take further climate-related actions. And I'll just read this fantastic quote from the head teacher at Grimesdyke, who I can see is with us this evening. She's in our video about the Nature Park 5-step process, and as part of that video says the wonderful phrase, we're rewilding the site, but we're also rewilding our children as well, which is just an absolutely fantastic point to take forward as I pass you back to Jenny and Claire.
Thank you, Jen. I hope everybody can hear me again now. So back to the Red Kite schools in our project. We thought that it was crucial to us to involve as many children in the process of change as possible. And the start of this process is getting to know their grounds and making sure they start to understand what sort of habitats can benefit what species and start to consider ideas of connectivity and natural processes. So we're really getting them to see that they are part of nature and that they can make a difference, getting them to look closely at what's around them. Then we're gathering their ideas about how they use their grounds. So with most primary schools, we've been delivering pretty much whole school assemblies from year 1 to 6, talking about what the project is and why it's so exciting and important to get involved. And you can see the pictures on the screen here. We then follow up with activities outdoors if possible. This slide shows a mix of 3 nature park activities, teaching children about habitat. Here we're encouraging children to think about and explore parts of their school site that make good habitats for certain species. They're then supported to think about how we can improve those parts of the site for those insects, birds, mammals, amphibians, and how we can encourage more and different species to those areas as well. Just trying to get the slide to move. So some more activities, sound mapping and colour collecting. These activities required the children to use their senses to explore the world around them more carefully and to notice nature. So they first listened and wrote or sketched what they heard, natural or otherwise. Here the children really started noticing bird song and weather conditions especially, and you can see their lovely drawings in the top right there. They then went around the site and collected as many different natural colours as they could. So plants, petals, feathers, and you can see their beautiful sort of creative, artistic colour maps at the bottom there. So with this activity, they're really coming away with the learning that the more colours they find, the more diversity, the better it is for wildlife. Next slide, please. We found that all the nature park activities and being outside and in nature generally is a real leveller for learners across age groups and abilities. And this Nature Zines activity is an especially good example. So here children are asked to create collages to show what they'd like their outside spaces to look, like to feel and to sound, and what wildlife and habitats they want to encourage. So this activity we did at Templemore High School in Leeds. We did it with children from year 7 up to year 10, and all of them absolutely loved this activity and got really, really creative. Again, something I don't think that is that easy to do in the normal curriculum. We also had a large SEND class who were able to enjoy and engage with this activity, and really importantly, have the feeling of autonomy and agency in their learning experience. And creating a vision. This is something that all the activities lead up to, and it really has to come from the school and the pupils themselves. This slide shows how some of our schools have been engaging with pupils to come up with a new vision. At Western, which is a central Harrogate school that has no green space at all, they tried the Opportunities for Change activity, and this activity supports learners to think about what it is they're lacking in their schools. So here in the bottom right corner, you can see that they've identified that they don't have anywhere comfortable to learn outside. And then we encourage them to think about what interventions they could put in place to change that. Western also went further by doing a Google survey with their pupils, asking them what they want to see and do in their outside spaces, how they want to feel when they're engaging with them. And then you can see all those lovely pie charts that gives you a really clear idea of what they're looking for. All these activities really put learners at the centre of the process, and it makes for a pupil-led mandate for action, ensuring they're engaged from the start, which is really the main thing.
Right, so back over to me now. We've explained a bit about how we get lots of information from the school community. We've done a habitat map with the schools, and I'm now bringing it back to a massive rewilding site. And looking at this, this is a picture from NEP, which is a big rewilding project in West Sussex. And this was intensively managed farmland only kind of 20 years ago. This uses lots of herds of animals to basically rewild the land, which obviously we can't do on a school. The species recovery here has been incredible, like way more than what anybody expected. But the structure of the land I wanted you to look at, because actually any school with green space could mimic this. So at first now we're going to talk about schools with green space. We are then going to go on to talking about schools without any green space later. So looking at the habitats that you can see here in a mosaic: short grass, long grass, and in the summer this will have had flowers on it. This was autumn when I took this. Hedges, trees, and scrub. So scrub is predominantly thorny bushes and small trees, often in association with other kind of rough, tall vegetation. It's incredibly valuable habitat, and it's something that we've lost massively across our normal farmlands and countryside. Healthy soil. So I wanted to take just a minute here to talk about soil. When this project began, there was nothing living in the soil anymore. There weren't even worms. Healthy soil means it's not disturbed, so it can build up a structure in there with loads of different microorganisms and larger organisms. You're not adding fertilizer to it. You're not compacting it and squishing down the structure. You're not putting a lot of chemicals on there. When that soil is healthy, those organisms are pulling carbon down into the soil, and so it's a massive carbon sink. So people always think about trees as a way to capture carbon and therefore affect climate, but healthy soil with any natural habitat on it can do that. So you can actually be doing that in your school site, and that's a great message for the kids. They can do it in their gardens. Something that's not on here is water. Of course, water is a massively important thing to have on your school site. So we're looking here at grasslands, arboreal areas, so trees and stuff like that, and water, all of things that you can have on the school site. So how do we decide where, what, and when to do these things? We use the habitat map that we have already discussed to help to guide us in this. We've talked about healthy soil. These are things that you would aim for in your site. You think about connectivity of that natural habitat and a range of different habitats across the site and across the year. So you're thinking about not just your site, but what's outside it. So what species might there be just next door who could really benefit by your site having some linkage with that, and also their movement across your site. So even things like birds and bats, which fly, of course, prefer to fly along a line of a hedge or a line of a tree. And of course, they're getting not only food, but they're getting shelter and safety from that as well. So if you can look at connecting arboreal sites, but also rough grasslands and everything across your site, looking at the whole site, not just one corner of it. Wavy edges wherever possible is really great, because the edges of habitats tend to be the most species rich. You get lots of little microclimates, microhabitats there, so you can support more wildlife. Of course, it's not always possible, but if it is. We've mentioned already ponds or wetlands. So the place that we really started with the Red Kite schools was thinking about what we could do for free. Could we get the baseline management to benefit biodiversity as much as possible, and then build on that? So routine maintenance of the land. So we're thinking about grass cutting, hedge cutting, those sort of things, and making sure that there are places where children can immerse themselves in those wild habitats. So it's not a bit that's fenced off from everywhere else, it's a bit where the children are zooming around and able to access it. So I am now going back to Grimes Dyke, which we know we've got the head teacher and the site manager here on the call, which is absolutely lovely. It's a really inspirational school if you haven't seen it. We've had site visits there, which they've run for Yorkshire Rewilding Network, and there is a picture of one of those there. But if you look at that aerial photo, you can see what we're talking about really when we're talking about linkage of habitats and connectivity across the landscape. You can see there's lots of tree connections. There's some bits of trees outside the site, so that is connecting nicely with the landscape around it. The cut short grassland areas, of which there are quite a few, is a massive site. are actually nestled within the wild habitat. So the sort of balance has shifted really, and the children are throughout all of it. So if I'm correct, the children have access to this whole site from the age of year 1. And there's even a pond there, it's all fenced off inside the woodland. Kids can fly around in here, there's paths cut for them to run through, and actually the outdoor learning area is in the middle of the grounds rather than being linked to the school site. So nice pictures there of some kids enjoying it, and the nature classroom, which has a fantastic view out. So thinking about sites that you might be involved with, I thought I would start here, which is the first thing that you can look at is where you can do absolutely nothing. So most of the Red Kite schools, or a lot of them, actually have areas like this, where the one on the left there is a picture I took at Rossett School in Harrogate, actually, where no kids go there and nobody's really done anything with it for quite a long time. And actually what's created is a really rich habitat for wildlife. But often the schools kind of look at these areas as being a bit difficult and something that they should be doing something about, but they don't have time. So I think the first thing is just to shift your viewpoint on that and go, look at this amazing nature area. Aren't we lucky we've got it? We're going to continue doing nothing with it. Unless you've got invasive species in there or something, in which case, obviously, you'd have to do something about that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about grassland management. If you have areas that you've found that maybe are a little bit species rich when you're doing your habitat mapping, but you need short grass there, you can actually just reduce the cutting a bit. So this wouldn't work, say, on a football field where you need it absolutely smooth like a bowling green, but in other areas where the kids are accessing it, cut it a little bit less and the small herbs will flower. If you've identified very species rich areas where you can have long grass, you could do a meadow management. That's a cut in late summer and another one kind of late autumn. That's to mimic traditional hay meadow management. It will make it more species rich. So I should have said, if you add nutrient to grassland, you will tend to decrease the species richness. So what you want is a low nutrient environment. I've put this in here. We have included these strips of short grass alongside the long grass on the Red Kite schools, as they have done here at Grimsdyke. So this is another pictures from Grimsdyke. That's to just make sure that it's obvious that it's intentional. So we haven't left long grass by accident. This is for visitors to the school. It's intentionally done. And actually at the Red Kite schools, we've produced signs which are going to go out to every school to help with that and help with education of the wider populace. So the way that we've chosen to communicate these things in the Red Kite project is using a habitat management or activity plan. So this is one that we have done for Temple Newsome Halton Primary School. This is a really simple and easy way to communicate with the contractors about what they need to be doing on the site. So we talked already about we're going to just get the baseline to start with, that's free. In fact, Temple Newsome Halton have really gone for it. So you can see there's lots of wavy edges around. There's actually tree planting areas. They suggested a bog garden, so we're going to go for that. All the coloured bits, yellow, red, green, brown, those are all things where the management is going to change, and it was short grassland cut, not really for any reason. The only bit that is going to be cut now on a 2-weekly basis is the blue bit. So a bit like at Grimsdyke, the amenity grassland is going to become less and the other bits more. We always have a little table of what prescriptions that goes along with the maps. You don't need to read this, but it's just to give extra information to the contractors. So we've talked quite a lot about baseline grassland management and identifying areas for other interventions. And this is something else that I'm sure probably most of you know, but the Woodland Trust provide free tree packs for schools. You can apply for them every year. They're native species and they're good provenance stock, so it's really an amazing resource that you can use. And of course, what all schools have is plenty of labour. So this is at Rossett School in Harrogate, which was one of my pilot schools. Last year, every year group in that school was offered the opportunity to plant trees. So the top pictures are of the children last year planting trees. And then this year, year 7s are also planting trees there. They had more than they could do with the children this year. So our sponsors came in, NG came in. So the bottom ones are all them helping to plant trees. And we also found another area, and this is an even higher level of intervention really, but this had a massive load of weed matting in it. So it was never going to develop into anything, and we just needed to get that plastic out of the ground. So they came along, ripped that all out, created a seed bank, and we've seeded a hay meadow in there. I wouldn't normally product place here, but Moores Gate is a really good place to order your seed. You've got to be really careful when you put seed in that you're getting a good provenance, and they are really reliable and also can give you quite a lot of advice about what is appropriate for your site. Just quickly, what a difference it can make just in 1 year, one growing season actually. So this is an area at Rossett School again, where it was just a bank that was cut every 2 weeks for no reason, because no one ever goes there. We planted trees with the children and then just let the grass grow long. And we had identified that there were quite a lot of herbs in there, so we weren't actually surprised, but all these flowers came up. And it's just so much more beautiful and pleasant for people. And also here you can see another angle of it. It's already starting to obscure the kind of very blank grey walls that people would have been looking at otherwise. So they're soon going to be able to look out at lots of little trees that are growing up.
So we've seen a lot of pictures of schools with the benefit of amazing green space tonight, but we know there are loads, particularly of primary schools, with next to no green space, and they're definitely not excluded. There are so many things you can do to green the grey. So we've got here a school, it's actually my children's school, a Victorian school in North Leeds. We've got holes cut in concrete to put trees in, which obviously brings shading to the outside space, cooling, interest. We've got raised beds and planters that children get involved with, planting herbs, food plants, obviously great for pollinators. The top image is of a green roof, which is obviously fabulous for cooling buildings and for extra biodiversity. All of these provide benefit for wildlife and climate resilience, but also ongoing activities for children. It's important to say that if you are thinking about putting planters in on a grey space, this can be a fantastic activity for children, watering every day, but obviously you need to think about holidays and when nobody's going to be there, and you can perhaps think about automatic watering systems when you're planning for these sort of interventions. These interventions also take a little bit more work, perhaps a bit more money, but we have lots of ideas for funding. We can perhaps go into more information in the Q&A, but there are mechanisms. Local businesses often happy to sponsor, local charities and community groups happy to involved with funding or man hours, and of course the children and PTAs can get involved with fundraising as well. Ponds and water, we haven't spoken too much about water tonight, but they are obviously an amazing way to add learning opportunities and to boost biodiversity. So in this photograph on the left, you can see a raised pond, safe for schools, accessible for children with mobility difficulties, and of course totally possible if you've got a grey school and you can't dig a pond. Loads of great resources on the National Education Nature Park website about how to create a pond. Another fantastic thing to add is a rain garden, particularly good for schools that have problems with flooding. So this is a sort of landscaped depression in an area of ground. If you've got soil and green space, or a planter like the one in the top photograph, plant it up with native vegetation, and it's designed to sort of capture and absorb stormwater, runoff from roofs and paved areas, things like that. Slows the flow, acts like a sponge. Brilliant opportunity for learning about the water cycle. Bottom pictures are bog gardens. So this is all about, really, this is not possible in a grey school, but for green schools, making the most of an already wet or boggy area, perhaps where you already have an issue, plant up the area with wetland plants. And again, it's helping to hold water in a certain place and reduce it in other areas. So as a bit of a sort of summing up, we've got this lovely photograph here of some orchids. So we've given you loads of ideas tonight and loads of opportunities for what you can do in your schools, and you can really choose whatever works for you. What's the same across all of our schools is the sense of possibility and joy, really. Just like rewilding, we're not looking for a set outcome. We're not looking for the return of a particular species. We're more on a journey to see what can happen when the focus of management is to benefit wildlife and benefit learning. So here we can see two very excited members of staff at Rossett School in Harrogate, where they've simply stopped mowing a sort of this area by a car park, would you believe? And there we've got common spotted orchids appearing. We also think at the top, that's a bee orchid there. We also think we've got in a couple of the Leeds schools some bee orchids, and we'll confirm that this summer when they actually come into flower. But it's all going to prove really that really great things can happen when you let nature take the lead. So we've got some resources and some contacts for us here. There's lots of further reading, and as this is recorded, you'll be able to go back to this and just some fantastic articles to give you more information and sort of depth on what we've been talking about tonight. We listed a lot of different activities that we've been using from the nature park, so we thought it'd be useful to give you all the names of these activities so you can go back and have a look on the nature park for all of these activities and find them for yourself, download them for yourself. And for more information, if you want to get in touch with Jen, there's all the contact details there, and I hope you've enjoyed it and it's been useful.
All right, that's us done. So I guess we're over to the Q&A now.
Well, first, thanks to all three of you. It's absolutely shines through how committed you are to this. And when you see the pictures of the smiling kids and the grounds as well, you can quite understand why. So thank you for that. Few people are putting questions in the chat. It's a lot easier if you could pop them in the Q&A bit, please. Otherwise, I've got to jump between different sections. But we have got a decent number of questions in, so I'll get going. Maybe one for Jen first. There was a question about are there any resources from the nature park for people to undertake bio-blitzes?
Oh, yeah, so not bio-blitzes specifically. We have got iNaturalist supporting activities. But there is one under development, I believe, that is going to be BioBlitz centric. So if you sign up for updates on the Nature Park site, you should get some information about when that's released, or just get in touch with myself and Jen, and we'll make a note to inform you directly.
Thanks, Jen. I've just seen a note from someone saying they've got to disappear to put the kids to get to bed. As Claire just said, we have recorded this and it'll be up on our website in a few days. So if you're interested, do come back and pick up the last bits. While you're there, Jen, just one other bit. Is the nature park resource for schools only, or are other youth groups able to engage with it?
Yeah, so the only thing that's locked to schools only is the habitat mapping. So that requires, excuse me, that requires you to log in and have a URN number. Every other resource on our website is available for anybody to use from the resources tab. So please do have a go. And if you want to feed back to us on how you found it, then we'd love to hear about it.
Thank you. Then one I'll switch to either Jenny or Claire, I'm not sure which. Have you investigated green walls as an option for growing in areas you've got less space?
I can answer this because we were talking about this at Western actually. The issue with green walls, and I think Jen has also confirmed this from her experience in schools, is the watering of them. So while it's an amazing thing, it looks brilliant, and of course it cools everything, it needs quite a lot of maintenance. I think that can be quite difficult over the summer and maybe quite costly. So it's something we actually haven't then pursued because of that. So I think if you have a green wall, you have to be thinking really carefully about how it's not going to turn into a crispy wall.
Can I chip in with something on that
Yeah,
as
go
well?
on, Jen.
Just, I'm aware that there's a school down in the southwest in Ilfracombe, I think, in Devon, who have plumped for a green wall. But one of the things they've built in with the students there is they've got an IT project for them to code up Raspberry Pi devices to try and time their automated watering. So it'll be an interesting experiment, at least, to see how that works out.
There's a fascinating one that stretches beyond the schools into the community. I'm not sure any of you could comment on this. A small primary school in a rural village, they don't have much green space on their own site, but it is all around them. Have you examples of people working with the community to do rewilding with the village as well as the school?
I think I can perhaps help with this. My school, or my children's school, is a Victorian school without green space. It's not in a very rural community, but we have built up relationships with local councillors, and there's a local park very, very close by. It's not as easy because obviously you need teachers and you need enough resource to get children off site. But if you can build up relationships with people that look after areas close to the school, you can use those as your area. So we've done tree planting there. We're going to hope to have activities, art activities, sports activities in that local park. So it's sort of building up the relationships with the community, hopefully, or with the landowners. It could be just getting in touch with a private landowner and asking for permission to take children in there. But that can work if you've got no green space for yourself.
And I think children are really good influencers, aren't they? A bit of enthusiasm and they can achieve a lot more than adults sometimes. So
yeah, definitely.
Excellent, thank you. Couple on some of the issues that might be encountered, sadly. How have you got around the safety challenges of ponds and the misconception of stagnant water and mosquitoes?
oh, mosquitoes. We've not come across that personally.
No, or other biting
We
insects,
have,
we should probably say.
I think a lot of this is about education and also accepting that there is some risk. So I think you've got to meet people part way for a start. And there is some risk to having water. I know at Grimsdyke they're brilliant at risk assessing everything. However, they still have fenced the ponds off to make sure that children can't actually climb in there and be in there unsupervised. That's when it's a full-on big pond. Claire showed pictures of raised ponds. So you can go down that route. We've been to lots of schools where they have like much smaller ponds, which are pretty accessible and safe. Stagnant water can be an issue in ponds. You can end up with algae, particularly if you've got nutrient input into the water. So you can just say, yeah, that can be a problem. If it is a problem, you need to aerate it and put some more plants in. Yeah.
And if I can chip in as well, one of the Nature Park programme partners is the organisation Learning Through Landscapes, and they contribute a lot of resources to the programme, as well as the East and West Midlands teams. They have a great section on their website about understanding risk and taking a risk-benefit approach. So there will be some risks, but also there's risks if you don't do things. There's lots of tangible benefits of children understanding their own limitations, being able to be around water. I'll pop a link in the chat now because they've got quite a lot of good examples of these risk-benefit assessments, many of which can be tailored to school sites.
Okay, thank you. One more about challenges before we'll get on to some really positive ones. How do you convince educational authority managed schools and their contractors to change cutting regimes or stop using pesticides, especially when it means they might not get paid for something they used to be doing?
Well, in the case of the Red Kite Trust, because we're doing this at a trust level and they've got one contractor that's doing it all, they just put it into the contract. And actually, timing wise, they changed contractors just around the time when we developed the first set of habitat activity plans. So for us, that was pretty good timing. But the other schools are changing as we go along. They're just speaking to the contractors. I mean, it's probably different in different sites where it's not such a big contract because they've got so much work to do. They've got line, they've got tons of playing fields that they're still going to continue to cut. They've got line marking, they've got all of this stuff. So they are completely fine with it. However, that might not be the case for a small contractor on a small site. I think in those cases, you do have to do a lot of talking. I mean, I've spoken to the managing director directly and had a meeting with them for the contractor of the Red Kite Trust. So that's open communication is really, really important at all levels. That's why we were talking about involving stakeholders from the start, because you can produce something that you think is really clear and they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about unless you've spoken to them early on and gone, by the way, does that make any sense to you? And then they go, oh, not really. So that's the whole thing again about meeting people halfway or partway or wherever it is. Like, they've probably got a really valid point of view. So it might be that you have to wait a little bit. If you've got a contract with somebody and it specifies X, Y, and Z for the next 3 years and they really don't want to change it, you have to live with that and then be patient, I think.
The other thing is that having the children part of the project and the teachers and the senior leadership team means that contractors and management teams know that the whole school is behind this.
Yeah.
It's come from the children, it's come from the teachers. It's not just us going in as ecologists and saying, look, you really should do this. You know, it's much more, it's a much
Robust,
better,
in a way.
much better, robust argument if you've got everybody behind you.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you don't have your senior leadership team behind you, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And it certainly is, as far as we can see anyway.
And I'd also add that the climate action plans might be a way of trying to get that as a biodiversity action within a strategy that your school or a multi-academy trust are going to implement, because biodiversity is one of the specific target areas. So if there's been a commitment by the senior leaders to work towards that, then that's something that you could use in negotiation with the maintenance.
Brilliant. And that message of discussing with people, engaging people, meeting them part way, I think is absolutely what we see as key to rewilding. So great stuff. We're pretty much out of time. We'll just conclude with a few about extending this beyond what you've already done. Are the Red Kite schools having open days so others can come and see it?
Not that I know of as yet. In terms of extending it, one thing that we're really trying now is to get it taught as part of the normal curriculum. So it's really, this is Jen's thing and the nature reserve, nature, whatever it's called, park thing. But we're trying to now meet probably the curriculum leads, and Jen is able to do some workshops with them on how to involve, how to get this part of the normal curriculum. So that's like a really next step that we'd really like to achieve, that we're not quite there with yet. But yeah.
Thank you. And the resources from the nature parks are probably one from Jen, presumably open to all schools, private,
Yes.
primary, colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, we're always under development as well. So there will be many more resources for SEND settings. That's currently under development. And we're going to have a development sprint on the FE resources. So there'll be a lot more of those in the next year as well.
Thank you. There are a fair few more questions coming in still about the new nature GCSE fitting in with this, encouraging climate resilience measures. Would you work with other trusts? But I think we're probably pretty much out of time. What I would say to people is if you've got questions, email them in to info@yorkshireWildingNetwork.org.uk. That's on our website if you didn't get it there. And we'll try and pass them on. But yes, in future years, we do hope part of our summer site visit programme will include some schools.
We may manage it this year, but we just haven't decided on that one yet.
Need to let the team deliver the programme rather than trying to organise visits as well. There's an awful lot of it going on.
And it's sort of a yes to all of those things you mentioned as well, Jeff. If we can get the funding, obviously we'd love to do it. We'd love to continue with this trust and to help bed this all in. We think the trust-wide approach works. We'd love to do it with another trust. We're hoping that this can sort of, like the nature park, scale up across the country. This, it really works. So fingers crossed that it just gets bigger and better.
And also we want to share what we've done. That's why we're doing this. We want to help other people do the same thing in other areas if they want to. You also, as well as the info at one, there's the Wilding School's email address, and there's Jen's email address there as well. So
yeah, I'm just thinking if people don't get back to the resources, we can forward them.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, so I wanted to say thank you personally. It's been really exciting being part of this project and seeing it expand. Having Claire involved, the Rewilding Network's been massively supportive, and Jen at the Nature Park have been massively supportive as well. We've even had someone up from the Natural History Museum to one of the schools. So it's felt like such a nice collaboration and a really positive thing to do. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody for that. Yeah, and absolutely. Our funders, Angie, who are absolutely lovely and also really helpful and great. So
thank you, Jenny. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Jen. Jenny, especially, you've thanked everybody else, but it's incredible the amount of effort and inspiration you've put into it yourself. So thanks for that.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
We
It is
can
very
tell.
exciting.
We can tell. So I'll just conclude by saying this is our last webinar of this winter season. If you've enjoyed it, we'd love to have a donation from you. So I've just popped that screen up for a moment. But although it's the end of the winter webinar series, we're just coming into spring. The birds are singing, things are starting to happen outside. So get out there. And in April, we'll be publicising our summer site visit programme, which will be a chance to visit something like 15 rewilding sites around the region. Some have been on our programme previous years, some are brand new. So make sure you're signed up to our newsletter to be the first to hear about those. Some of them do book up very, very quickly. And if you've got other ideas for webinars that you want us to do next winter, please let us know through info@. And we hope to be catching up with many of you in the coming months, whether in person or online. But thanks to John for the intro, to all our speakers for both this webinar and the last series. I'll stop now, but I'll just leave the webinar open if anyone wants to put any reflections in the chat or contact each other while you've got people on the webinar.
John, I mean, Jeff, can we see this chat afterwards? Are we going to be able to?
We'll be able to download the chat afterwards.
Ah, perfect.
Share
Brilliant. We were
the
just
fabulous
like, oh no, how are we
feedback
going to
that's
see all
come.
this? Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, we can get to that. So thanks again, everybody. We've had more than 50 people on, which is wonderful. The recording's there. Share it with your friends and colleagues. Let them know about it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you so much.